It's fantastic to have you here. Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm going to interview you. I've got a few questions for you, but I should just give Catherine an introduction, because Catherine is, just in case you don't know Catherine, Catherine is very special in this industry. You know, there are a few people that have been around a while, 3-4 years. There's a few people who have been here several years. Catherine is, dare I say, the youngest old timer in the dating industry, right? So Catherine actually started in the dating industry at age 15 by starting up myYearbook with her brother. So now she's 31, and sorry, I shouldn't give your age out, but anyway, it's just the kind of the special. 15 years experience in the dating industry, and so there are a few folks in the industry that have been around a long while. I think it's important to identify the folks that have been committed over a longer period, and I'll talk about that a bit more shortly. But I'd like to ask you some questions, Catherine. So myYearbook, it's been a while since we thought about myYearbook. Can you tell us, how did you come to start it at such a very young age, and what was myYearbook?
Yeah, so myYearbook back in 2005. So my brothers and my brother Dave and I actually got the idea for the company. We were new in our high school and we're trying to make friends, and we realized that it was actually pretty difficult to meet new people for us. And so admittedly, probably the geekiest solution to this situation was to form a website to make new friends. But that's what we did. And so we, the concept was, how can we make meeting new people fun? We approached Geoff, who had actually just moved back to the East Coast fairly recently. It just had sold his first company. And so he loved the concept. He was familiar with Facebook when that, Geoff being from Harvard was very aware of Facebook, and so saw it as a space that made sense. And so he joined us, and we became a team. And yeah, myYearbook was a place for our first our first slogan. I actually think was "You've got friends." So the whole goal was to make friends. Obviously, that was a callback to "You've got mail." But yeah, so we started as myYearbook. We launched in just one high school, my high school in Skillman, New Jersey. Got about 400 people sign up in the first week, which we were very impressed with, because, like I said, we had no friends. That's why we created the app. And within the first 9 months, we actually had 1 million members signed up, and that's actually when we opened our first our office in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where we are still headquartered today. And so that's kind of the idea. And myYearbook was always, originally we started in just my school, but actually it kind of morphed pretty early on to being about meeting new people in general, not just in your high school. And so when we grew to a million members, it actually wasn't growing school to school in the same way Facebook did. We grew by basically just people telling their friends, and we had fun quizzes and things like that we engineered virality with to attract members to the website at the time. I almost said app, but we were definitely a website at the time. Yeah, and so myYearbook, we listed on web. We had actually a few of our features that are, for instance, we had a popular feature called Battles, and that actually exists now today. Completely different product, but we've recycled some of the product names, because I think that there is still a lot of the things that people wanted to do on websites then, people still kind of want to do now. It just, the technology has changed, and so we've upgraded. So some of the products changed with it. And so at the time, Battles was like an image contest with some voting, and now in Battles today is in our live video feature. Two members kind of hash it out while their viewers send them gifts to vote. We've actually had some pretty amazing battles with top streamers that get very, very competitive, with lots of sniping in the last few seconds of the battle. But yes, that's how myYearbook started. And then in 2010 is when we launched our mobile apps. 2011, we became a public company when we merged with Quepasa. 2012 was actually when we rebranded to be MeetMe. And so that's what our main app, or sorry, I shouldn't say our main app, but our first app, the one Geoff and I co-founded, is MeetMe. That, like I said, was the name that we chose in 2012. And since then, we've acquired Skout in 2016, Tagged in 2017, Lovoo also in 2017, and Growlr in 2019. And so now we are the Meet Group, and we have a whole portfolio of applications.
And you made an interesting transition, because you started off with a heritage in social networking, and you made a transition towards dating. Now, we've heard of a few companies more recently that have gone from dating to social networking, and that's actually part of the initiative at LTR, is that we're bringing together the online social community folks with internet dating folks. We can all learn from each other, of course, but you've made a transition from the social networking arena over to internet dating. Can you tell us about that? Why did you make that transition? And I think you've got a different spin on dating, really. I'd almost put it in that social discovery camp. It's just not dating like the rest of us know it. You've made something quite different.
Yeah.
So could you tell us about that? Let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah, so I think that you're right on. I think what we're doing really expands dating. Our members have always, from the myYearbook days, have always used the app for meeting new people. And that kind of naturally plays with dating, because when you're meeting new people, if you're a single person and you're meeting so you're a straight female and you're an interesting man, then naturally, if they're flirting with you, then you're interested, you're probably gonna flirt back. And I'm of the belief that really anything can be a dating app if you're if people are in the correct mindset. And actually, my husband and I actually bonded over Words with Friends, and so any app can kind of take that kind of flirty atmosphere. But where our apps are separate is that we think of ourselves as kind of the mobile version of, or specifically with MeetMe, I should say, as kind of the neighborhood bar. And if you think about it, there's a flirty atmosphere to bar, but there's also plenty of different reasons to be there. And so you could be sitting at the bar just trying to watch the game. You could be trying to find a date. You could just be hanging out there with friends that you might all just know from being neighborhood bar. This is your community. These are the people that you want to spend time with. And then or you could be there for the live entertainment. Maybe there's a band on. So there's plenty of reasons to be there. And so there's kind of like this casual atmosphere, and it leads into almost like a more serendipitous experience when you do meet someone. Whereas if you're on a swiping app, the intention is generally find a date maybe for that weekend, or at least to fall into a relationship. But as a result, it's not very fun. It loses a lot of the entertainment, and it loses a lot of the depth that the person has, because let's face it, we're all more than a profile photo. And so being able to form these deep connections and with other community members makes a big difference. Now, I'm speaking a lot about MeetMe. Obviously, Growlr is a dating app. Lovoo is a dating app. But all of our apps, I think what sets all of them apart still is that there is this form of community that really deepens the engagement on the apps, because there is something something more to keep them involved and connected with the community.
And of course, you've got the video aspect. I never forget, I sat down with Geoff some years ago with Arena. We were in London, and we sat down and I think it was a breakfast, actually. We had met for a breakfast. I remember Geoff saying, we're going to do one-to-many video. I'll never forget. I'm thinking, okay, hold on, let me hear, did I hear you correctly? One-to-one I get, but how one-to-many? I always thought that was pretty amazing. It was a little counterintuitive, I must say, back then, figuring where's the arc? How's that going to land at being really good for the in the internet dating context? So you way ahead. And of course, there was some use case built up in China with Momo. I mean, that was a great inspiration for. But you've westernized it. You've brought this idea to the West and blown it up to a $200 million run rate as part of your $360 million run rate business at this stage. Last numbers I looked at least. I might be a little bit behind, but that's phenomenal. I mean, it's only been a couple of years that business was non-existent. But what I'm intrigued with is you kind of observed the real world and you've bottled it. And I think the best design principle is we've got to start with where people are at and then look at what they really want and kind of build a product that actually helps them feel natural. And yeah, I mean, you've essentially really done that. It's always counterintuitive with the video, though. So what's next? I mean, you did one-to-many video. That's clearly been very successful. Where are you going next? What's next?
Well, I mean, so there's a few things, and we think about the company's 3 pillars where, one of them is, we want to build the most engaging dating communities in the world. And so one of the questions there is, okay, well, what makes it a good dating community? And so you have to have good messaging, good dating products that actually lead people together. And another one of our pillars is to invest in new products and services like live streaming, video, and AI to entice our community to spend more time. Where we're especially focused in 2021 is what we can be doing with machine learning and AI to, on the dating side, make better recommendations for people for who's matching, and on the live business, make better recommendations for if you're a viewer, showing you the streams that we know you want to see using AI to curate your feeds. And then the last pillar is really partnering with and acquiring new audiences. We did this a lot, starting with Skout, Skout tagged, Lovoo, and Growlr. I mean, that was our thesis for acquiring these applications, was that we saw the promise of video and we wanted to, basically, we bet the company. We were like, let's embrace one-to-many broadcasting. And so we invested very heavily, started investing that in, like I said, 2016 when we acquired Skout. And so now that's looking more like partnerships, and we're particularly through our platform as a service products with video. And so now basically we have a simple video SDK that applications can use. Takes maybe 6 weeks, a couple of people, and you can have our one-to-many broadcast feature, including our talent team, our moderation, which obviously is an insanely important part of that business, and basically all of that R&D that we've put into it, as well as our audience. We have over 1 million broadcasters and over or nearly 9 million viewers per month engaging with the video product. But I kind of want to backtrack a bit for why it works. When people usually hear video and dating, they go to one-on-one, and one-on-one I actually think is a pretty bad product. Now we have it in all of our apps because it's kind of like something almost that you should have, but when it comes down to it, it's a relatively poor product because percentage-wise, only a small number of users or small percentage users are really going to use it daily. Whereas with one-to-many broadcasting and dating apps, it could be 15 to 35% of people using it daily. Where one-to-many live streaming actually can engage a much higher percentage of users. So say 10 people viewing for every one creator, for instance. But the reason that works so well on dating apps is because if you think about dating apps, they actually can be the loneliest places on earth, because often people are coming there because they're looking for connection, and sometimes they're looking for entertainment. And if you don't find that connection right away, so maybe you're not having people chat with you. That's a common problem on a lot of dating apps, is you're not making those connections. All of a sudden, you're kind of feeling even more lonely, because not only because you joined an app to make connections and you're just not being able to get there. But where video comes in is it transforms those moments of loneliness into moments of connection, because now you can have interesting interactions very quickly. Like I mentioned before, there's nearly 9 million viewers, over 1 million broadcasters. You can jump into any of those streams and feel connection automatically. You can join into the group chat. And so it really allows there to be entertainment and connection with each other. And then of course we have actual dating games too that also play very well into dating, like our Next Date game, which is video dating. We've actually had over 50 million Next Date rounds played since March, so since the start of the pandemic. This idea of having entertainment, I think, marries very, very well with dating, because I think that when it comes down to it, people don't like dating apps. I mean, if you think of designed to be deleted. It's no secret that dating apps aren't the most popular in terms of how members feel about them. And so why can't we make dating fun? And that's kind of where live comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And people almost need distracting from their goal, don't they, in the dating context, because it's such a serious kind of the goal. I remember having a chat with I met Dan Ariely when I was at Cupid. I was my CEO said, go talk to this guy at MIT. And it turned out to be Professor Dan Ariely before he wrote Predictably Irrational. And he rocked my world. He told me a few things. He provided me a bit of an education. One thing that I really remember is he thought when people, I think, he said, when people are in the dating context, you almost want them to play a game. You want them to be a little distracted so that they be who they really are. You know, their real character comes forth. And I thought that was a great observation. I think that's really key to what you've achieved here, is that you've given people a way to be distracted, a way to be entertained. And also the introverts, dare I say, can lurk and hang out and get an idea of the culture and context before they ever start piping up and really contributing to the community. So
on the introvert side, what's interesting too is, so some of our top streamers, so very popular streamers on our apps, I've talked to them, some of them personally, and a lot of them would describe themselves as introverts, and not all of them, obviously, but quite a few of them. And the reason I started broadcasting is because of the format, you don't necessarily feel like you're chatting with lots of people, but you are, and so you're not nervous because it doesn't feel like you're talking to a large group of people, even though and then you see all the comments come in, and it's great, but it's not as intimidating. So we have introverts broadcasting and viewing, so it's not just lurking if you're introverted.
Let's go back in time a bit. I'm dying to ask you, you've had a very long tenure in the dating industry. I would love to know what you would advise your 15-year-old self. If you could imagine going back in time and you had the opportunity to give some advice to your 15-year-old self, what would you do differently? What would you advise yourself?
On very much on the personal side, I would have advised myself to be a little bit more forthcoming. So actually, when I was in high school, we raised our Series A in high school. So as $4 million, actually, one of our venture capitalists wrote me one of my letters for recommendation. So it was a fun senior year. At that point, I had some pretty significant criticism among some classmates for just kind of some mean teasing. Most people are very supportive of what you're doing, but the people who aren't are just so much louder. And so it becomes harder to ignore. And so when I went to Georgetown, I actually was I kept to myself a bit more. I didn't really share this, pretty large company that we were building until one of my professors actually kind of outed the concept in front of a class in like my sophomore year, because she had found out about it. And then I realized just how supportive a community could be. And so I would say whenever you're starting a company, so I'm sure plenty of people had this experience of people saying, oh, well, that's not a good idea, which is, we got that a ton back then. And I think you don't really know if anything's a good idea until you actually execute and try it. Because if you think about basically a lot of the apps, as I say, like what makes it obvious that they're a good idea is that they're working. And so, usually when people kind of look back, they have this bias of like, oh, well, that would never work. Or that obviously worked because it's working, but you have this hindsight bias, but you have to think about, where you are at the time. You don't know how it's going to work. So it makes sense to just throw yourself into it, which is what we did when we, bet the company on video. I think that we've always been, pretty strong about realizing, where we wanted to take the company. And I think that, that me personally having that in my personal life would have been better earlier on as well.
What I really love about the Meet Group is you've got that family element as well. You've worked with Geoff, you've worked with Dave. Can you tell us more about that and how? And there's a few of us that have. I work with my wife. She's right here actually, but she's shy. She's not going to come on camera. So, what would you say are the advice that you give to folks that are working with their other halves and brothers and sisters in the industry? What makes it work best?
So I think, one of the things that makes it work best is, it's very clear Geoff is, CEO and has been, monumental in basically every product and direction and strategy for the company. And I think that, having that separation and knowing that's important. Then obviously I focus on marketing, and, I think I think what's important is just, having that, there's a lot of trust there in general when you are, literally have known someone your entire life. But also just in general at the company, actually, we have a lot of people who've been there for, who've been at the Meet Group for a very long period of time. It just makes the teams very cohesive. And it's important to have a committed team when you're building a product. And there are downsides as well working with family. For one, it's much harder to separate out from work because any family event can become about it. I remember in 2011 when we were doing that deal with Quepasa, my brother's daughter, who I think was 5 at the time, like she was little, was like, oh, would you guys stop talking about the deal? So like it was, so there are downsides like that, but actually one of the fun upsides is, so I was pregnant last year and I got to steal all of Geoff's food, basically, at work. I would be like, oh, what are you eating for lunch? And then like, if I noticed he wasn't finishing his fries, like, I'm gonna just take these. And so, that's an extra benefit.
All good. So Catherine Connelly, you're the SVP Marketing and co-founder of the Meet Group, and we really appreciate your time.